"You're about to leave this courthouse with nothing," my husband whispered before the judge entered. He smiled when he said it. Not a nervous smile, a comfortable one. The smile of a man who already knew how the story would end. He squeezed his girlfriend's hand under the table. She looked at me, and for 1 second I almost thought I saw pity in her eyes. Then she leaned toward me and whispered just loud enough for only me to hear, "Enjoy your apartment, if you can even afford one." My husband laughed under his breath. The house, the retirement account, and by tonight, our kids will be sleeping under my roof, not yours. His girlfriend added one more line, soft and sweet like poison in a teacup. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of them for you." I said nothing. My hands were folded in my lap, steady. Even though my heart was pounding so hard, I thought the whole courtroom could hear it. I was looking at a single folder sitting on the clerk's desk. A folder the judge hadn't opened yet. The bailiff called the room to order. The judge walked in, sat down, opened the first folder in front of her, and read for almost a full minute without saying a word. Then she looked up. Not at my husband's lawyer. Not at me. At him. "Mr. Whitfield, I've heard enough. If you've ever been treated like you meant nothing by someone you loved, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And if you enjoy stories where the truth wins, subscribe, because what happens next is something none of us saw coming." 22 years earlier, I was 23 and completely in love with a man named Richard Whitfield. He was in law school. I worked 2 jobs to help pay his tuition after his parents cut him off. Mornings at a diner, nights doing billing for a dental office. I typed his practice briefs after midnight because he said my eye for detail was better than his. I believed in us. When he graduated, I cried harder than his own mother. When he got his first job, I kept our apartment running on a receptionist salary while he worked 80-hour weeks. We had Emma 4 years later, then Caleb 2 years after. I gave him my job to stay home since daycare cost almost as much as I made, and Richard said it made more sense while his career grew. I told myself it was temporary. It never was. For 18 years, I ran our household like a full-time job nobody paid me for. Every school event, every doctor's appointment, every 2 a.m. fever. I sold my grandmother's wedding ring during a slow year at his firm, so we wouldn't fall behind on the mortgage. I nursed his father through his final year of cancer while Richard was too busy to take time off. I built the life he stood on top of. And 2 years ago, he stood in our kitchen and told me he was unfulfilled. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. 6 months later, I found out about her, Vanessa. 29, a paralegal at his firm, always perfectly composed, like she'd rehearsed every conversation before she had it. Richard didn't even deny it. He just looked at me and said, "You're right, I never contributed financially, but I gave everything else. Now it's my turn to be happy." He filed for divorce 3 weeks later. That was the day my life split into 2 versions of itself. The version where I was a mother every single day, and the version I was about to be forced into where I was a mother only on the days a court allowed. The first time Emma and Caleb went to stay at Richard's new apartment for a trial visitation, I sat in my car outside their old elementary school for 2 hours because I couldn't make myself go home to a quiet house. Caleb was 11. Emma was 13. I had never spent a night without them in their entire lives. Not once. That first night without them, I made 2 plates of dinner out of habit before I remembered they weren't coming home. I ate cold pasta alone and cried until I couldn't breathe right. I called them at exactly 7:30, the time we'd agreed on. Vanessa answered Caleb's phone. "He's a little busy right now, sweetie," she said, like I was a telemarketer. "I'll have him call you back." He never called back. The next morning, Emma texted me one word. "Okay." I didn't even know what question she was answering. That became the shape of my week now. Sunday drop-offs that felt like surrendering something I couldn't get back. A house that echoed. I left the hallway light on at night out of habit, the one I used to leave on for Caleb. Even on nights he wasn't there to need it. I'd catch myself buying his favorite cereal before remembering he wasn't coming home that week. I'd stand in Emma's empty doorway some evenings, looking at the bed she used to make so carefully, now untouched for days. Other mothers at pickup gave me that careful, sympathetic look, and I hated needing anyone's pity just to get through a Tuesday. Weeks passed. Vanessa started posting pictures. Baking cookies with my children. Taking them to the pumpkin patch I used to take them to every October. Braiding Emma's hair, the same French braid I taught myself from a video years earlier. Every caption read something like, "These two are my whole heart," or "So blessed to be their bonus mom." Richard commented underneath, "Heart emojis. My beautiful family." Built on the 22 years I gave him. Then someone forwarded me a screenshot that neither of us expected me to see. It was from a group chat between Vanessa and two friends. Emma had accidentally been added through a shared photo album link, and, being 13 and curious, had scrolled up. Vanessa's message, dated 3 weeks earlier, read, "Honestly, the kids are exhausting. I'm doing the whole stepmom thing for Richard, not because I actually like being around them. Caleb won't stop talking about his mom. It's annoying." Emma sent me the screenshot with no caption at all. Just the image. I read it 4 times before I could process it. Every photo, every bonus mom post had been a performance. Not for my children. For Richard. For the world. My children were being used as props in someone else's story, while privately being called exhausting by the same woman feeding them cookies for the camera. That night, Caleb called me crying. He didn't want to go back the following weekend. He said Vanessa got short with him the moment her phone wasn't out, made him and Emma act happy for pictures, then ignored them the rest of the night while scrolling her feed. "I miss our house, Mom," he said. "I miss you making dinner and actually eating with us. Dad's always working and she's always filming something." I was wrong to think the manipulation stopped at photographs. Richard's attorney was Preston Cole, known throughout the county for one reputation. He didn't just win custody cases. He dismantled mothers on the stand until there was nothing left for the judge to see except doubt. At mediation, Preston suggested, gently, that maybe I had struggled emotionally since the separation, and that given Richard's stability, it would be less disruptive for the children to live primarily with their father. I realized what he was building. Not a custody argument, a narrative, where the woman who raised these children for 18 years quietly becomes unstable, and the woman who called them exhausting in a group chat becomes stable. Money buys a convincing story if nobody checks the footnotes. I went home that night and opened the old filing cabinet in the garage, the one full of receipts I'd kept out of habit more than strategy, and started reading through the last 3 years of our marriage. That's when I found the first inconsistency. A wire transfer for $84,000 to an account I didn't recognize, dated 4 months before Richard filed for divorce. Long before he ever mentioned being unfulfilled. I thought that was the worst part. I was wrong. I brought the statement to a financial advisor, Dana Okafor, with no connection to Richard's firm. She looked at it for less than 5 minutes. "This wasn't a one-time thing," she said. "This is a pattern." Over the following weeks, Dana traced 11 transfers going back almost 2 years, totaling just under $340,000, funneled into an account under Vanessa's maiden name. Money that should have been marital assets quietly moved out the back door before the divorce was even filed. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He'd planned and hidden it for years, all while telling a courtroom I never contributed financially. If he did this with money, Dana said, ask yourself what else he's hidden. The court-appointed evaluator was a woman named Renee Ashford. She met with the children twice, 45 minutes each, at Richard's apartment, staged with fresh flowers, homemade cookies, and a family game night Caleb later told me they'd never once actually done together. Renee's report called the home warm, engaged, emotionally supportive, and said Vanessa demonstrated an active, nurturing role. It described my home, the one these children had grown up in, as adequate, but showing signs of the mother's continued emotional distress. Adequate. 18 years of birthday parties, fevers at 3 a.m., sacrificed careers, sold heirlooms. Adequate. An old colleague, Priya, now worked records at the county courthouse and called one evening, her voice low. That evaluator, Renee Ashford, has done 6 evaluations this year for cases where Preston Cole represented the father. All 6 times, the father got primary custody. 6 for 6. Priya sent me public filings showing Ashford had been paid as a consulting expert on a separate case handled by Cole's firm 8 months earlier, a conflict never disclosed to the court. I brought this to my attorney, Louise Marsh, a quiet woman I'd almost not hired because she lacked Cole's confidence. What she had instead was patience. This isn't just a custody case anymore, Louise said. This is fraud, undisclosed asset concealment, and a conflict of interest serious enough to get an evaluation thrown out entirely. We're not walking into that courtroom asking for fairness anymore. We're walking in with proof. The week before the final hearing, Emma called me crying so hard I could barely understand her. Dad said if we don't say we want to live with him, Vanessa won't let us come to my dance recital. He said we have to act happy in front of the judge or things will get worse. My own 13-year-old daughter was afraid to tell the truth to a judge because of what her father's girlfriend might take away from her next. I called Louise immediately. That's coaching a minor and using access to a child as leverage, she said. Write down exactly what Emma told you, word for word, date and time. We're going to need it. Then someone walked into my life that neither Richard nor I expected. Vanessa's own sister, Cara. She reached out through a mutual friend, saying she'd watched her sister play house with my children for months, posting curated photos, while privately resenting the intrusion on her relationship with Richard. Cara had text messages, dozens, Vanessa calling Caleb clingy, calling Emma dramatic, just like her mother, writing 2 weeks before the hearing. I can't wait until this custody thing is finalized, so I don't have to fake caring about these kids every weekend. Cara had stayed quiet out of loyalty for months. But watching Vanessa coach a 13-year-old to lie to a judge was where she drew the line. I have kids of my own, she told me. I couldn't live with myself if I said nothing. Richard's building had exterior security cameras, and one had captured an argument between him and Vanessa 2 weeks before the hearing. Cara knew the building manager and got him to pull the footage, time-stamped, unedited. In it, Vanessa is shouting at Richard in the parking lot. No audio, but you don't need it. You can read her lips say one sentence, over and over. I'm done playing mom for your custody case. That was the folder. The one sitting closed on the clerk's desk the morning the judge walked in and read for almost a full minute before looking up. Mr. Whitfield, I've heard enough. Judge Ellen Ferris spent the next hour going through everything methodically, without raising her voice once. She addressed the financial concealment first, asking Richard directly whether he intended to disclose the $340,000 as marital assets. He stammered. Preston Cole tried to object. The judge overruled him and asked again. Richard had no answer that didn't sound like a confession. Then she addressed the custody evaluation, laying out the undisclosed relationship between Renee Ashford and Preston Cole's firm and the pattern of 6 for 6 outcomes favoring his clients. The evaluation would be stricken, and Ashford's conduct referred to the state licensing board. Then Emma's coaching, reading my daughter's own words back into the record, and asking Richard whether he'd told his children their access to family events depended on how they testified. Richard said nothing. Finally, the footage. Vanessa went pale as the judge described exactly what it showed, and what she'd been overheard saying to her sister for months. "Playing mom," Judge Ferris repeated. "Those were your words, Ms. Hale, describing your involvement with 2 children who trusted you." Vanessa didn't look at Richard.
She didn't look at me.
She stared straight down at her hands. Caleb wasn't in the courtroom that day. He was too young, but Emma was, sitting quietly beside my sister in the gallery. When the judge looked toward her gently and asked if there was anything she wanted the court to know, Emma stood up on her own, without anyone telling her to. "Mom never missed one game," she said, voice shaking but clear. "Not one dance recital. Dad missed almost all of them, and when he did show up, Vanessa was filming it for her page. Mom was always just there.
For us.
Not for a picture." Judge Ferris ruled that afternoon. Primary custody to me, full disclosure and division of the concealed assets, sanctions against Richard, and a formal referral regarding the conflicted evaluator. Vanessa wasn't held in contempt, but her testimony and the footage were entered permanently into the record. 2 weeks later, I heard Vanessa had moved out of Richard's apartment. Playing mom had lost its appeal once there was no court case left to perform for. Richard's firm placed him on quiet leave not long after the sanctions became public among local attorneys. Reputation moves faster in a small legal community than any court order ever could. I didn't celebrate. I picked my children up from school that Friday, both of them, together, for the first time in what felt like forever, and we drove home. Our home, the one that had been called merely adequate. That night, I made 2 plates of dinner again. This time both were eaten at our table, together, while Caleb told a rambling story about his science project and Emma laughed so hard she nearly choked on her water. He thought winning meant taking everything from me. In the end, the only thing he kept was the life he destroyed himself. If this story meant something to you, tell me where you're watching from tonight. And if you believe the truth always finds its way to the surface, subscribe, because more stories like this one are coming.